Hello, this is Professor Salat again, and in this video we're gonna finish working on homework 6, and that is chapter 7. And before I start doing this, let me just show you exactly what we are talking about in here. In section 7.2, we're gonna try to answer a few problems here, but we want to remind you of one thing, is that when you try to test a claim about a mean, when the sigma is known, in other words, when we're giving you what mu is, oh no, sorry, sigma is known, which is sigma here, which is the population standard deviation. So when the population standard deviation is given, we will have two options to test a claim. The first option is to compare the z statistic to the z critical. That is the first option we have. The second option we have will be to compare the p-value to the alpha. Now, I prefer the p-value to alpha all the time, but I'm going to show you both, at least with the first example or with the first homework assignment. To find the z-statistic and p-value, we're going to show you how to do that with StatCrunch, and this will be a new thing. But for z-critical, we can use what we learned in the past. To find the z-critical, we press stat, calculators, normal, then we look at HA. And again, always look at HA. And HA is going to include one of three symbols in here. Let me move this slightly to the right. Now, it's going to be either less than, or greater than, or not equal. Those are the only three possibilities for HA. Now, if it's a less, you're going to go to the last box and fill alpha. So alpha will be given. So just put the alpha into the last box. And this sign has to match this sign. So less is less. If it's more, it's going to be more. And we put alpha in the last box. Now, if it's not equal, notice that with not equal, we have two tails. So if there is two tails, alpha will be the area. Again, let me draw a small picture in here to show you. If it's a two-tail one, there will be two tails. This will be alpha over 2, and this will be alpha over 2. In other words, half alpha, half alpha. So what is left in between, not equal. What's left in between is going to be 1 minus alpha, or 100% minus alpha. So keep that in mind. This would go what we put in the middle or in the last box when we have not equal. Again, for less or more, we just use alpha. For between, we use the complement, which is 1 minus alpha. Now, if you hit compute, that's going to give you the z critical. And notice that if there is only one tail, there is only one z critical. If there is two tails, there is two z criticals. 1, 2. So those are the z criticals that will you will get. Now, what will happen if you use the different method, which is the other method, the one we prefer? What will happen if you use the p-value versus alpha? Remember, alpha will be given. So you need to find the p-value. To find the p-value, you follow those steps. Actually, when you try to find the p-value, you're going to get the z-statistic also. So you press stat, z-stat, one sample with summary. You get to this point, you're going to fill the three values here, which is what's the mean, what's the standard deviation, what is the sample size. By the way, the sample mean and the sample size are given in the sample. The standard deviation here is sigma, which is given in the problem. So you follow those and you go to the hypothesis test and you make the selection there. Then after that, you decide on the test. Notice that with StatCrunch, it doesn't give us the choices of what to put in here. This is always equal with StatCrunch. Now, with the book, this can be less than or equal, more than or equal, greater than, or not equal. I'm sorry, less than or equal, greater than or equal, or equal. But we're going to use equal all the time. This one here, HA, is going to be different from story to story. And the minute you fill the top box here, the lower box will fill automatically. So let me just go to the homework and show you how we do this. Now let's start with this problem. In number 7 here, or number 11, sorry, here it says, test the claim about the population mean. So we're talking about in here about population mean. In other words, we're talking about mu. So when you look at H naught and HA, you have to have mu mu. Now, so what do we have in here? This is the claim, mu equal to 50. Notice that in the claim, they told us that mu is equal. So it is equal. If it's equal, we're going to choose, again here, for H naught and HA, both of them about mean. And they tell us in it's equal. So equal goes always with the top, and the opposite of equal would be not equal in the bottom. And they tell us 50, so this will be 50-50. And if we try to compare this one to what we have in here, we notice that A is the solution. Excuse me. So A will be the solution. And let's check and see, and that will be a correct answer. The second one is they tell us to calculate the test. They call it standardized test statistic. So we want the test statistic. Notice that to find the test statistic, we talk about this in here. To find the test statistic, you follow those steps. So let's go follow those steps in our problem here. And notice that we have already, for this problem, we have the sample mean, which is 49.6. That's X bar. We have the sample size, which is 64, and we have the standard deviation, which is 3.03. So if we go to StatCrunch and go to follow the steps listed, let me just move this in here, show you. Here is stat. I'm going to go to ZStat, one sample with summary. When I get to this, I'm going to move this in here, and I'm going to try to fill the numbers as I see them on the problem. So the numbers that we have are 49 for the sample mean, 49.6, and the standard deviation, which is sigma 3.03, and the sample size in this case 64. And notice that I need to go down to hypothesis test. I check it, which is already checked. Notice that the equal here, I have no control over it. I'm just going to put 50 as in the test, and this will be not equal. So it is, if this is equal, this is not equal. I don't have to change this one. I just keep it not equal for HA. Now, when I hit compute, I get the results in here. And by the way, they ask for a test statistic. In this case, the test statistic will be a Z statistic, this answer here. So the Z statistic will be equal to native 1 point, and they want, in this case, 2 places. So it's going to be 0, 6. So when we check, it's going to give us the correct answer. The second answer will be determine the critical values. So to determine the critical values, let me move this up here. I don't need the full screen. To find the test statistic, let me just move this around. Here we said if you want to find the Z critical. If you want to find Z criticals, those are the methods you follow. So we'll follow them from here. To find the answer here, we're going to go to stat. And again, I'm following those methods. I'm going to go stat. I'm going to go down to calculators. I'm going to go down to normal. And I'm going to stop for a second and ask myself this question. What do I have for HA? Do I have a less, more, or not equal? Let's move this in here and see. For HA here, if you look at HA in my problem, HA has not equal. So if it's not equal, what I need to do, I missed something in here to tell you. If it's not equal, you have to use the between. So for not equal, we have to use between first. So when you choose between, then after that, you're going to go to the last box, which is the last box, delete what's in there, and put 1 minus alpha. What is alpha in our problem? Alpha in our problem is 0.05. Here is alpha. So just put 0.05 and hit compute. When you hit compute, that's going to give you the shape you're looking for, and it's going to give you 2 critical numbers. Now the question is what the critical numbers. One is negative and one is positive. So there is a way to write this. Now the Z critical, notice that there is 2 of them. There is one that is negative 1.96 and the other one is 1.96. Again, here is the left and here's the right. So you can write it this way, or you can write it like this way. Z critical equal plus or minus 1.96. In this case, in this problem, they are telling us to use the plus or minus. If they use a comma, we cannot use plus or minus. So in this case, we're going to put 1.96. In other words, it's going to be plus 1.96 one time, negative 1.96 the other time. The last thing we need to do is we need to look and see how we test this problem. Okay, as I said earlier, there are two ways to test the problem. Notice that I'm going to go in here to what it says stat crunch and number 8 in my case in here. It says hidden results. I'm going to go to the number 7, which is those results I get earlier. Let me move this around. I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about in a second. I have two ways to test this problem. Now, first way is to use the z-stat or statistic versus the z-critical. We know the z-critical, there is two of them. Here is z-critical, which is negative 1.96, and this is 1.96. And the z-stat is equal to negative 1.06. Again, it is in here. We got it earlier. It is negative 1.06. Now let's look and see how we test this problem. If you look at the z-stat, which is negative 1.06, it fell here. It fell between the negative 1.96 and negative 1.96 and 1.96. Notice that this is the rejection region, this is the rejection region. This value fell in the region that is not a rejection region. In this case, we say we fail to reject H note. Now, how come we fail to reject H note? Because our z-stat did not fall into the rejection regions. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is this. What is the p-value? And what is alpha? The value is here in the table. In the results we got, you see their p-value? The p-value is 0.2909. And the alpha is 0.05. And we know the alpha is 0.05 because they gave it to us in the problem there. Alpha equal 0.05. Notice that the p-value is bigger than alpha. Now, we know the rule says that we will use all the time. The rule says if the p-value is bigger than alpha, fail to reject H note. So we're going to fail to reject H note either way. I prefer this method because it's faster. Now, let's go back to our problem. This is our problem. Our problem says, or there is a claim. Notice that the claim is the mean. So this is the claim. The claim is the mean is equal to 50. And notice that our decision was fail to reject H note. But H note happened to be the claim. So we're going to fail to reject. Okay. We're going to fail to reject this claim. So fail to reject. When we fail to reject H note, automatically we are failing to reject the claim. In other words, we fail to reject H note and we are rejecting. Again, if you fail to reject H note, you're going to reject HA. So in this case, let's go back to the question and see what they want. In the question in here is they're asking us to make a decision. And what is the decision? Determine the outcome. Fail to reject H note. Fail to reject H note. I'm reading A and B. In part C, reject H note. In part D, reject H note. Notice that I'm not going to use C or D because they are telling me to reject H note. I'm going to rely only on A or B. Fail to reject H note, fail to reject H note. So let's look. And here it says at the 5% significance level, there is not enough evidence to reject. And the bottom one, it says in part B, says there is enough evidence to reject the claim. Notice that we said there is not enough evidence to reject the claim. Now, when you fail to reject something, then you don't reject. Now, in here it says there is not enough evidence to support. Remember, if you don't support, it means you reject. So no, we're going to choose A as an answer. So that is the answer here. Okay. Now, let's go move to the next one, and we're going to try to do it a little bit faster than this one, because in this one we try to work with step-by-step solution. Here, if we read the problem, it says a nutritionist claims, so there is a claim here, that the mean, automatically, this is about the mean. So H naught and HA will be about the mean. Now, what they claim? They claim that tuna consumption by a person is, they didn't say is less or more or not equal, they just said is. Is in the language, the English language, is the same as equal. So automatically, if I choose equal here, the opposite of equal will pop up in HA. Okay, and they said is 3.4, so I'm going to put 3.4 here and 3.4 there. So let's look back in here, and the statement that will match here is going to be D, because D is a match. So when you check, which is good, but before I go further, I have to write my claim. Remember, they said is, so this is my claim. Oops. It is my claim. Oops. Now, let's go to the next part. In the next part, they say find the test statistic Z. To find the test statistic, remember, test statistics is not critical. To find the test statistic, we talked about this earlier. To find the test statistic, those are the methods here. So you can always reference those if you need to do this. But I'm going to do it in here in this problem. Again, let me open StatCrunch. Come on. Okay, I'm going to follow those steps. Stat, Z-stat, one sample with summary. I'll move this to this side here, and I'll copy from my problem. What does the sample mean? Notice that in the problem they said a sample of 50 people. So in this case, this 50 represent in this problem is the number of people in my sample. So I'm going to put the 50 as the sample size. A sample of 50 people shows that the mean tuna, so the mean is what? The mean is 3.2. I'm going to put the sample mean 3.2. Assume the population standard deviation is 1.03. That is the reason why we use Z test, because they gave us already sigma 1.03. Remember, if they did not make this statement, if they did not say assume the population, and it's very important, if the population is missing there, if they said the standard deviation, this means it's a sample. And I would not use the Z test, I would use a T test. And again, we're going to use the T test in the next section. Now, we're going to go down to the test in here, and it is equal, not equal, as in part D, but it is 3.4 for both of them. Now, when you hit compute, you're going to get the Z stat, which is in here. So we're going to write it down as native 1.37. Okay, so this is a Z stat. Compute, and it's going to give us the correct answer. What is the p-value? Here is the p-value next to it. The p-value, they want the p-value to 3 decimal places, is 0.169 whatever, so it's going to be 170. The 3 places. Then finally, what should I do? Okay, so this is the time we make a decision. So let me put this down and show you how we make the decision. We're going to make the decision based on p-value and alpha. Alpha in the problem here is given here in the problem. I'm pointing or highlighting this alpha. It will not highlight somewhere in there. So it is 0.05. So it's going to be 0.05. And the p-value we calculated from the problem 0.170. Notice the 0.170 is bigger. Now, if the p-value is greater than alpha, automatically fail to reject H naught. Now, in this case, look at this. H failed to reject H naught, but H naught happened to be my claim. So in this case, when you don't reject H naught, you don't reject the claim. So let's go in here. Fail. Part A says reject H naught. We're not going to take A. Part C says reject H naught. We're not going to take A. we're going to take either B or D because both of them they say fail to reject H naught. Now, in part B, it says there is not sufficient evidence to reject the claim that the mean tuna consumption is equal to 3.4. And part D says fail to reject H naught. There is sufficient evidence to reject the claim. Notice D is telling us fail to reject H naught and reject the claim. And that's wrong because H naught is the claim. So we're going to take B because when you fail to reject H naught, there is not sufficient evidence to reject the claim. In other words, you're accepting the claim. Okay, so, and this is the correct answer. The problem after that, and that is number 13. In number 13, it says a light bulb. So again, we're going to work with two problems in here. One of them is going to be H naught. One of them is going to be HA. And we don't know what the problem is talking about. So let's go back and read the problem. It says a light manufacturer guarantees that the mean, so they talk about mean. So it is a mu here and a mu there. Let's continue. The mean life of a certain type of a light bulb is at least. Now, what is the meaning of at least? Now, they said at least 747. So this is 747 and this is 747. But at least, like imagine you want to go to ride at Cedar Point or something, or you want to go into a bar and the sign at the door says you must be at least. At least means greater than or equal. So that is the meaning of at least. It's not just greater than. If it's equal, it's okay. So because of the equal, that's going to go here. And what is the opposite of greater than or equal? Automatically, it is less than, because they complement each other. And so it is at least. So this is the claim. It happened to be H naught is the claim. Now, a random sample, so this is what they did. They took a random sample and they found those results. So, by the way, let's read through the problem because it's very important in here. Now, it says in here, assume the population standard deviation, assume the population is normally distributed, which is good, and the population here, the population standard deviation is given. Notice that they told us the population standard deviation is 63. It means that sigma is known. Remember, because they said population. If they said assume the standard deviation without the word population, then it is a sample. So, and we use a different test. We call it a t-test. So let's go in here and use StatCrunch. To use StatCrunch, I'm going to go through those steps, stat, and I'm going to go down to ZStat, one sample with summary, and I'm going to try to pick up the information they gave me here. They said a sample of, here they said a random sample of 25. That is the size. That's how many light bulbs tested. Has a mean lifetime. So the mean is the sample mean, which is 725. And they told us to assume the population standard deviation is 63. I put 63. I come down to the test and notice one thing in here. Okay. By the way, they told us that in the test, if you look at the problem, I didn't answer the problem yet. So let me just go in here and look at this. In here, when we selected the problem, the one that will match my selection will be A, because it's greater than or equal to and it's less than. The rest of them are different. Okay, so when we check, the answer is going to tell us it's correct. But notice one thing in here when I pull StatCrunch. With StatCrunch, okay, I have to match A. So this is 747. But notice one thing. I don't have a way to control H naught and make it greater than or equal to. So ignore H naught and just focus on HA. HA will be a less. Okay? And when you hit compute, just make sure you match HA in StatCrunch, HA to HA in the problem. And don't worry about H naught. So when we do that, it's going to give us the answer. It's going to give us, actually, we don't need this answer yet. Let's store this answer for later. In the first part, they want to find the critical values. Now we want to find the critical values. We don't want to find, and by the way, we can call it Z critical or we can call it Z note. So let me just put this away for a minute. Keep in mind that Z critical is the same as Z0. There is no difference. How do you find the Z critical or Z0? I showed this earlier in the problem here. You have to look at the choices you have. First of all, to find the Z critical, you're going to go stat, calculators, normal. Let me go through this. Stat, calculators, normal. Then I have to make a decision based on HA. Notice that based on HA in our problem, I have in HA I have less than. So if it's less than, here is the less than. And you go in the last box and fill alpha. What is alpha in our problem? Alpha in our problem is 0.05. So we're going to go in there and put 0.05. Now when you hit compute, you're going to get the Z critical, which is this Z critical. So let me move in there and copy it in here. Z critical will be only 1, which is negative 1.6. And again, round to 2 decimal places, 64. And in here, they say use a comma, but there is only 1. Remember, if it's a left tail, there is only 1. So you don't have to worry about use a comma to separate answers. Okay, so now which is the pick? Look at this. StatCrunch gave us the picture. The picture is part C here because it's a left tail. Now we go to the next one or next part of the problem. It says, okay, now let's go back to StatCrunch and close this. When we did the math earlier, we get the Z stat. What is the Z stat? Again, the standardized test statistic. Notice that we did that when we went to stat, and we went to Z stat, and we went to one sample, and we went to a summary, and then we filled those numbers in. We get those results. So the Z stat in here, which is here, is negative 1 point. And again, they want, in this case, just 2 places, so it's going to be 7.5. And we check the answer. And then the next part will be, they want us to decide. Remember, I'm not going to decide based on the Z. I'm going to decide based on 2 things. Alpha is here, 0.05, and the p-value here, which is 0.04. So let me go to the decision here and show you what I do. Here, the p-value is 0.0404 and alpha is 0.05. Notice that from this problem, the alpha is bigger than the p-value, or the p-value is less than, because 0.04 is less than 0.05. If the p-value is less than alpha, we reject H note. So notice our problem in here. Here is H note. So I'm going to go and in here to this thing and or H note and reject it. And this means that HA will not reject it, or we call it fail to reject. So this is my decision, is to reject H note and fail to reject HA. But notice that H note happened to be the claim. So if I'm rejecting H note, I'm rejecting their claim. So let me go back to the problem. I know what to do now. I'm going to reject the claim that they made. Remember, a light bulb manufacturer guarantees, in other words, claims that the mean life of their light bulb is at least 747. We're going to tell them, sorry, you are wrong. So we're going to come down in here and say what? It says in here, fail to reject H note, which is not true. We said reject H note. So reject H note is a C. Fail to reject H note is a B. Reject H note, which is a D. So we are between C and D because both of them says reject. So in C it says reject H note. There is not sufficient evidence to reject the claim. Now remember, it says not enough evidence to reject the claim. And that is wrong. We have enough evidence. We said reject the claim. So reject H note, and there is sufficient evidence to reject the claim. So that is our answer. And I'm going to stop here with this video.